Welcome to episode 1 of CommunityManager.tv. I'm your host, Daniel Tekanoff. Today, we're going to talk about what community managers need to know about rentals and rental cats. Now, a quick disclaimer, this is not an anti-rental video. This is a video about giving board members and community managers the tools they need in order to maintain healthy balances and relationships between their owners and their renters within their community. Now, if you're new to this channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button with notifications enabled so that you'll never miss a new episode. Our guest today is Clint Goodman from Goodman Law Group. Their goal is to help associations solve their problems and navigate anything from the simple to complex.
What's unique about us is, I think, number one, we're family first oriented. So any decision we make is based on what is best for our families here. Our vision statement is to be the most loved and efficient law firm. But I think for love, it goes two ways. One is it goes internally, we want to be loved. We want all of us to be happy to be here. And secondly, because we know that if we're loved here and we have a great working environment here, that we can treat our clients much better. And then in turn, they love us back. Because a happy employee makes for a happy client. So I think that's what's most different about us, is our attitude. We also take a unique approach to a lot of stuff. We try to avoid the legalese and speak to our clients in a way that they understand. Because we don't want to come across and say we're the attorneys and you're this person. We want to have a partnership. No partnership is on equal grounds. So that's what I hear most of our clients say, is they feel like they're treated as a partner with us, not necessarily just kind of an attorney versus client. We're here, you're there kind of a thing. A couple of years ago, they changed both the Condominium Act and the Planned Communities Act to limit where time restrictions for rentals have to be. It says that if you're going to limit the length of time in which you can rent, whether it's a time limitation for less than 30 days or more than 30 days, or it can't be less than 6 month period or whatever it's going to be, if it's a time limitation in rentals, that cannot be in a rule. It has to be in the CC&Rs. So that's step one. Is the statutes are pretty clear on that. It's pretty. If you don't have your CC&Rs prohibiting short-term rentals, essentially, if it's not in CC&Rs, typically you can't do it. There are a few exceptions to that rule, and folks will need to consult with qualified HOA attorney to find out what those might be. But generally speaking, if it's not in your CC&Rs, you can't enforce it. And that leads to the follow-up question is, okay, if it's not in our CC&Rs, can we amend our CC&Rs? And up until a couple of months ago, the answer would have been sure. Submit it to the members, let the members decide. But there was an Arizona Supreme Court decision that came down called the Cowway case, where in Cowway, the court kind of muddied up the waters of what amendments would be proper and what would not be. And so some attorneys say now that in order to amend your CC&Rs to include rental restrictions, it's unanimous consent based on this case. I don't agree with that, but then again, the law is so muddy right now on what it's going to take to amend CC&Rs with respect to rental restrictions that it's not something I typically recommend unless you want to spend a lot of money and put a couple of my kids through school.
So one area where I wanted to get some perspective from Clint was whether or not there are some communities where short-term rentals work better than in others.
This is from a first-hand experience that I had recently for Thanksgiving, actually. Our family took a vacation to St. George, Utah for some mountain biking. And this particular community we rented an Airbnb with. Everyone in that community was there like me. I mean, it was like an Airbnb short-term rental community. It was fantastic. There was a pickleball course, there was an awesome pool with a lot of stuff for my kids, heated. Every one of us there were there on the weekend. And what I found very interesting, that community was developed for the short-term rental, our renter. St. George, obviously the destination for people like us. for a short-term basis, right? To go play. That developer was very clear that was going to be a short-term development type community for people to rent their homes. And what I found interesting is when I went on Zillow to see what the property value was appraised at, that neighborhood, the property was appraised at $850,000 per home. It's crazy. And these were not. This was a two-story, small, cookie-cutter, two-story home that wasn't 5,000 square feet. I mean, this thing was like maybe 2,000 square feet total. It was still $850,000 because it attracted so many people. So they just, that is a benefit for people to find those types of communities. They're developed for that. There are other communities that absolutely do not want them, and I can see why. Might be a community that wants to have more of a residential feel. They don't want all the traffic, because in this community that I was at for Thanksgiving, everyone was parking on the street, and it was mad chaos. And that's what happens when you have a high volume of short-term tenants, right? Loud parties. It was pretty crazy. But there's other communities, and frankly, cities that don't want it. And so if you want a little more quiet, peaceful life, then obviously it might not benefit you to have a short-term rental type community. There's a couple of things you can do to mitigate. One is at the same time, this last year in Arizona at least, they gave cities the right to adopt restrictions on short-term rentals. Not necessarily prohibiting them outright, but requiring that if somebody's going to rent their unit on a short-term basis, they have to register it as a unit. They have to get a privileged transaction tax number. You have to advertise it with the tax number on the advertisements. They have to register somebody with the city that is responding 24/7 to any complaint, which is really nice because when I was an officer here in Air Mesa, if I was responding to a call for whatever, domestic disturbance, loud party, whatever, if dispatch had contact information of the person, whether it was an apartment complex or a home, they would contact the individual, or I'd ask them to, so that they'd be on site after I made sure that it was safe to resolve whatever the problem was. So this will be really nice for cities that implement that, because if no one likes it when there's a loud party at 3:30 in the morning and no one responds to help take care of it. But if I, as the officer, responded at 3:30 in the morning and I had the owner's representative there, if not the owner, they don't like that. So they're probably it's going to resolve much quicker. Also, the nice thing with these new requirements that the cities can impose, they can actually suspend the right to rent on a short-term basis. So there's several other options that the cities have, and it is up to the city whether they're going to incorporate them or not. But there are those options for them. From the HOA's perspective, one of the things that we're doing to mitigate, if your CCNRs are silent about just flat out prohibiting it, is the HOA can still adopt a tenant registration requirement under the statute, which requires that anytime the unit is being rented, they have to disclose the first and last name of the tenants, the length of the tenancy, which is just the beginning and end dates of the term, the vehicle information, and the contact information of the tenants. When I went to St. George, I wouldn't want that Airbnb landlord disclosing my personal information to that HOA, right? But that being said, in a community that doesn't want short-term rentals, but they also don't want the risk of amending the CCNRs, they can clearly, under the statute, at least adopt that rental registration requirement to make it a little more difficult for people to rent. And so maybe they might go find another community where it's much more favorable for them, like the one I was just talking about. Because disclosing all that information would probably agitate the tenant. I know for me, I'd be like, what? I don't want my information in the board's hands. I got my vehicle information? That's stupid. So So anyways, those are things that the board can require if they want to at least do something about it.
All this information on tenants and rental registration can be overwhelming, but thankfully Clint has a great solution.
The one thing that I hear a lot from the community manager's perspective is, okay, Clint, great. You told us about this tenant registration, but that's a policing nightmare. Or the manager's like, do I really need to monitor? How do you even monitor short-term rentals? So let's say that you have a community that already has a provision in the CC&R that says you can't rent it for less than 30 days. So what do you do then? Is it up to the manager now to monitor the community, go on Airbnb, VRBO, Craigslist, Google, blah, 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 blah? It's a pain in the butt, right? The manager already has a billion other things they have to do. So I know at least for us, we offer monitoring services in my office. So if anyone's interested in our monitoring service to take that off their backs, they can reach out to us directly. That's number one. As far as policing it, by the way, screenshots of them actively advertising as a short-term rental is great evidence that they're doing it. It helps us in court. But that's number one. And number two, with rental registration, that also can be a policing nightmare for a manager. And boards need to be aware it does cost money, especially if they're using us for that service. But it just depends on the community. Some communities, this is a huge issue and they don't want it. And so they are willing to pay more a month just to keep tabs on it and to ensure that documents are complied with. So it goes back to that partnership I was talking about with us. We've integrated these partnership opportunities for us to monitor for a flat fee. I think one of them is $150 a month, and it's 4 or 5 websites we check every month for and provide a report on. The other one is $250 a month, I think, which is about double that. So that's one option. That seems like that's working out really well. Our managers like the fact they don't have to do it themselves.
Now that we've talked about short-term rentals, let's talk about rental caps. 1, is a rental cap even legal in the state of Arizona? And number 2, if it is, how and when should that be implemented?
Yeah, rental caps. So if you're saying like no more than 25% of all the units need to be rented, the statute is specific to time limitations. So there might be an argument that you can impose a rental cap, especially in the context of condominiums where you have FHA loan backing. If you increase rentals in a community more than what the FHA allows, and you lose your ability to get federal funds on a loan, right? So there might be exceptions to that rule, but the safe answer here, generally speaking, is in order for you to have rental caps or rental limitations, they have to be in your CC&Rs.
I hope you've enjoyed this discussion about rentals. But wait, this episode's not over yet. I asked Clint to share his backstory so you could get to know him a little better.
So I used to be a police officer here in Mesa. I thought I was going to go that route, and the thought never occurred to me that I'd be an attorney, let alone one in this area. I was on the force, and a couple things happened where I needed to get into law school. Couldn't get in the force anymore, really. Either choose between law enforcement or my family. So, decided family first, I guess. Don't get me wrong, I still have lots of friends in law enforcement. But went to law school, and with the thought that I might want to go into the federal government, working in the law enforcement space, because I got my degree in Korean, and I thought I wanted to work for the State Department or something else. I wanted to spy on North Korea. And halfway through law school, ended up getting an offer to come back here in Mesa, because I was born and raised here. And so took the offer after talking to my wife about what our future plans might be, whether it was living abroad or staying here in a settled location. So we came back home and worked for a firm, a general full service firm, and did a little bit of everything from bankruptcy to contracts to estate planning to tax law, and one of the partners at HOA law. And I just like that more than the other areas. So that's how I landed in it.
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on CommunityManager.tv.